Good morning, everyone. This is such a wonderful day. Uh, this is the Aging Experts, and we have a wonderful guest for you who's had quite a change. I mean, lots of changes in his life, and he's going to share with us how he has done that and where he is now. But before I bring Jeffrey on, I want to introduce my wonderful co-host, Miss Barbara Ellison.
Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to the Aging Experts. Yeah. One of the things that we were just talking about in the pre-show was just what options do people have? And that's one of our goals for this show is giving you options that just because you've been doing something for 30 years doesn't mean that you can't change and change what you're doing. Just give you some options. And Jeffrey has done a lot. So it's such an exciting thing. So we are going to be talking to him, and he's going to be sharing with us the things that he's done to reinvent himself in his life.
Well,
So,
and one thing that I've thought of just as you were talking about options and just our little pre-show visit is that so many of the things like the move that he was just talking about prepared him for now because he can do many accents with what he does now. So
yes.
take it away,
Yes.
Jeffrey. Tell us a little bit about where you're
Jeffrey,
from, where what you do or what you did, and then we'll go on into what you do now.
Yeah. So I currently live in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico. I've always wanted to travel and live in another country. I'm from the US, and I was born in Virginia. And I have always had this interest in this fascination in the human journey and the human story. And that's been, as you'll see, a theme throughout every choice that I've made. And the level of my involvement in deepness has dropped with each choice that I've made. The first choice that I made was to go into advertising because it was clever and funny, and it interacted with people, and I really she's underneath. My dog is underneath with her play toy. I don't know if you can hear it or not.
No, we're good.
No, we're
okay.
Good.
So I enjoyed that, and I learned a lot, and I was in the media aspect of it. And what I did was I did media planning and buying at top agencies in New York City, which is kind of the Super Bowl of advertising, at one of the top 10 agencies in the entire world. And when we were planning for major brands and making purchases on the Super Bowl and prime time and figuring out how to best use the client's money to extract money from customers, we were basing our decisions off of research that showed if a person sees a 30-second commercial 3 or more times, it starts, and we're talking about visual, it starts to impact their beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors.
Oh, right.
We're talking 90 seconds total, right? 3 commercials can start to have an impact. So, at the time, that was my employer, that was my mindset. But it's fascinating to know that literally what we surround ourselves with is shaping our worldview, shaping how we interact with people, shaping our belief system, shaping how we speak. What we do, we mimic things that we see on TV, behaviors, interactions, things that people wear and stuff like that. So it's highly influential, both on a conscious level and most definitely on a subconscious level. And I was swimming in that, and that was human behavior, and fascinating to me because of how the humans are constructed and how we were interacting. And plus, I found it fun to be around everybody that was doing that. And from there, I went into advertising sales, which was to me, it seemed logical because I would be working with people that I was a media planning and buying person. And so I did that at large firms and then some small startups. And at the same time, I was to keep my creativity alive and to connect with things that I really enjoyed, I started doing improv classes, which led me to acting. And so that was in my spare time. And I was becoming very successful in advertising. And I was becoming much more unhappy. So I was like, okay, so
I think isn't that so often what happens, that you'll just realize that one day you'll wake up and go, what's wrong? What's wrong here? I'm not enjoying this. I'm not.
Yeah, I mean,
not floating your boat anymore.
Not floating your boat anymore.
No, and people, from the outside, it looked great, and I'm not saying it was a bad life at all. It just was unfulfilling. And now I understand, because I had kind of moved up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So I had been able to check off some of the base needs, and now I was essentially, taken care of. So I had to be with myself. Right. And look at things that I hadn't really looked at, and be with parts of me that I hadn't been with. And I couldn't fill that enough with work and play and, all these other things that I was doing. So I took a step back and I started to look at, okay, so what is it that, I want in my life? And one thing that I don't want is to spend my life saying, on my tombstone, okay, he did this one thing for his entire life.
Right.
So
stuck in that. And so many, don't you find that so many people are there, that they've been doing something for 30, we talked about at the beginning, for 30 years, and have no way of getting out, and have no idea of how to get out of it.
Right.
Well, here's another thing that's interesting about that is when they leave that habitual thing that they've been doing, they don't know anything else. They haven't cultivated the inside, like I was just talking about. And all of a sudden, all the noise around them, the job and the pieces that are attached to the job, the social aspect, because all of that is with the job. And then when you pull away from that, that dissipates. Some of those people were your work friends, and you're no longer working, right? So you've been so immersed in that, and you haven't crafted who you are. You haven't crafted your life. You have a work life, and work is gone. All of a sudden it's just like
and you don't have any friends outside of work. It's that's the thing,
which is a real
that Barbara and I work with. So often they're at the end of their career, or they're tired and they're wanting to change, and they don't realize, they don't see themselves as anything but what they do. It's like, right. Who are you? And they say, well, I'm an accountant. Well, I'm a, whatever. And it's like, no, who are you? And they cannot see themselves outside of that work box.
Right.
Because they've just immersed themselves in that for so long.
In the title or the description.
Yeah. I think we have in our culture a crisis of desire, which is driven by a lack of true connection to identity and crafting identity. We have crafted our personalities, right? We've made decisions, we've been influenced subconsciously. We're a creation of ours, and we can create anything internally. We can create new habits, which lead to new experiences, which start to craft a new version of ourselves. Many times people don't do that until divorce or illness or something, or a loss, or something that happens.
Until a lockdown. How many people have changed since the lockdown?
Right.
Look at the world before and after this decade.
Yeah. The lockdown is interesting to me because it's kind of like a it's a physical version of what I'm talking about. Everybody was forced to go inside physically.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you decided to actually go inside, inside when you were forced to go inside, then great, you could do work and you could evolve and come out like a butterfly, right?
Right.
But many people just went inside, and most people don't want to face themselves. They don't want to deal with the things that they've ignored by going to work, or, you know, and the pain and the unexamined parts of themselves. And as a result, they can't answer the question, who am I?
Right.
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 Because they don't know the most important person in their lives and what that person needs, you know, nourishment from their soul level, and nourishment, you know, how do I craft a life that is makes a difference, you know, to me and to other people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And
You
so
say,
many people
finding your purpose.
Yeah, so many people use that time to sit on the sofa eating bonbons and watching soap operas. And that's just a death knell to your life, because your physical health goes down, your mental health goes down. And, you know, but then there are those few that really worked at working on themselves, and they have new business, they have new side gigs, they have so much more to give after that year or so sabbatical. I mean, it was a wonderful sabbatical time if you took it. Now, I'm in Texas. We did not experience it like Barbara did in Chicago. We, you know, we sort of closed. You know? Plus, I'm in the middle of nowhere, so I didn't notice it a lot. I'm kind of sequestered.
Right, because you're way out there, right?
Yeah,
and that was me. I live way out of the city. And so consequently we didn't, and to tell you the truth, there was a few of us. I mean, I'm in the hospitality industry, and we just said, you are not going to shut us down.
I think smaller towns did better about that.
We got this small town. I live in a small town, and it was so funny because one day the health department posted all of these. There's these 13 restaurants in the county who are going against the mandate to shut down. And so many people posted, thanks for sharing us. Now we know where to go, because now we know what's up.
Right.
Themselves in the foot.
It was just the sickness of it.
Yeah.
That, hey, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But it was funny.
Yeah. It's you know, I think we have to have some humor in life,
because there's the two sides of it. Some people looked at it as this was the greatest thing ever, and other people looked at it this was the worst thing. The events itself of the shutdown were neutral. It's just how you responded to it.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're saying something that's critically important. Is you're either a victim of circumstance, react to it, or you are who you are, and it doesn't matter what's happening around you.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
You know, you're filled with joy, your spirit is alive, and sure, things happen, and, you know, it doesn't mean that you don't have emotion, but, you know, you have a different relationship with that emotion. You have a different relationship with that experience, and it doesn't own you. You just experience it and move it through. Right. And so I look at it like this: you can have these experiences and you can be in those experiences, or you can operate from here of a level of joy and gratitude, and those experiences can just happen, and you still have joy and gratitude for those experiences and the blessings that they offer. Because I know that from my life, and I'm sure most people's lives, that some of the biggest gains we've gotten, including the lockdown, have been from things that have felt really off or tragic. And, you know, I learned a lot from my divorce, you know, but I went through depression, and, you know, I swam through it.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, the most beautiful flowers grow in the valley, not on the mountain.
Yeah.
You know, there is something to be said about the valleys if you take time to stop and see the flowers and see those blessings that come along just here and there. But while y'all were talking about the lockdown, I was chuckling to myself, because Barbara and I, you know, we were already doing Zooms, and we were already in some masterminds and stuff like that. But then you start going on Zooms, and people are in, and you can tell people's mindset, whether it's positive or negative. You go on, and here's this group of 40 people, and there are people in their living room or whatever by themselves wearing a mask because they're on a Zoom call.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, huh? and
Yeah.
at one point I even said something. I said, guys, are y'all at a public location? Oh no, we're locked in. I'm going, you live by yourself? Yes. Are you alone?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it has nothing to do with intellectual intelligence. My daughter-in-law's one of her best friends from school was the valedictorian in her class. She and her husband were married. They had 2 or 3 children. They live here in Amarillo, and we, like I said, we didn't lock down that much, but they are in their very large house. Everybody has their own bedroom, and these people set aside a time. They totally locked down. They set aside a time, and each of the 5 people in the family had their kitchen time so that they would not run into each other. And other than that, they stayed in their bedroom, and the husband and wife wore masks in bed at night.
No way. I've never heard that one.
Way.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Now, I mean, it's like, that's when we talked on another podcast about fear, false evidence appearing real. There you go. And it depends on who you're listening to, and obviously they weren't listening to the intelligence side of their brain. They were just listening to what you were saying about those influences. And they were posting the deaths across the thing at the bottom of the news things. They were talking about it in every news program about how many people had died. They're not talking about that it was a tiny percent. Any death is tragic, but it was less than the regular seasonal flu, and yet people reacted because of the fear factor. And that's what people run into, is the fear of changing in their lives. Go ahead.
Yeah, going back to what I said at the very beginning, which is the TV, right?
What I'm saying,
so
yes.
When you have a ticker there, literally a ticker, like, counting off deaths, that has an impact on people. And
on the screen of every news program.
Yeah. And when you misclassify so many of those deaths, motorcycle accidents, so many different things that were misclassified. But when you go directly to the source, to the CDC, which I did at the time, I was like, well, what's going on? And I went directly to the CDC. And what was fascinating was that the average death in the US was 80. The average death with COVID was 82. That was on the CDC site.
And literally, that was counting all the young teenagers killed in a motorcycle wreck, and it's still 82.
Yeah. So, it's just looking for facts. And when you get into a fear state, the research shows you lose a third of your IQ. You make decisions that later on you regret. Yeah. And, you say things you regret later because you're activated and you're upset. When you're upset, fear is an upset, you don't think clearly. So, yeah. And in my journey, I've really I packed up everything. I left advertising because I went to that one place that really lit me up, which was, I went from basically, as I was listening to you guys before, I realized I went from my, my head and money to my heart, which was activated by acting and embodying and stepping in and empathetically living the lives of people without judgment and understanding that. And then from there, as I started to have to do the work that I had avoided, just as we were talking about all the people that, I did that too. I didn't know who I was. So I really started to dive in. And as I did that, I started to look at, what do I want to do in the world? And I looked at the media and the information that was putting out with this knowledge of the influence. And I was like, well, I actually want to be good, a force of good in the world. And what's being put out in the world is distinctly dark, predominantly dark.
Fear sells.
Yeah. And I don't want to be part of that message. I don't want to be part of creating that. I want to actually be part of the light. I want to be part of being there for people. And so then I started stepping into coaching and helping people really tap into who they are and to their essence and to their power and to their joy, and really kind of waking them up and getting them out of their head. Super important work. And it helps people not reach a point where they burn out and where they're where I was at one point. So it's been super fulfilling, and anybody can do it. And it was scary to leave, a great job to do, each one of these steps. But again, I didn't want to just have one thing on my tombstone, and I knew that there was more that I had to offer than building somebody else's company that was based on manipulating people to buy things that they didn't need.
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
so you went from advertising from the East Coast to the West Coast, and now you're acting. So then just kind of nutshell us how you ended up in Mexico.
Yeah, so um, I was in LA, and I was acting, and when I made the decision that I would operate differently and start listening to my heart and stop operating completely from my head and being clever and having everything figured out, and just being present essentially, and listening to what the communication was instead of figuring everything out. I get messages and communication, and I hear myself
Your
communicating.
intuition. That's your
Yeah,
intuition, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
So
which is part of your spirit.
that's part of your
exactly,
spirit.
exactly. And so I listen because I know the wisdom. I trust the wisdom. It's always right, even though the initial information doesn't make any sense. When I follow it and I get where it tells me to go, it always makes sense. And
Amen.
so I was told to go to San Miguel de Allende in Mexico, and I didn't know much about it. I wasn't too excited about the very little that I knew about it. But when I got here, I knew exactly why I was here. And San Miguel de Allende is called the heart of Mexico. So it's in the middle of Mexico, about 3 hours north of Mexico City. And it's built on rose quartz, which is one of the crystals that are known to be have some energy to heal your heart and activate your heart, which is the work that I'm here to do, is to help people tap into the inner wisdom, their intuition, their heart, and help them see the power that actually has. And it's a subtle power. It's not a push power. It's not a 3D power. It's not a power that we see in movies and things like that. It's the wisdom power. And so, because I know that I'm here to leave a legacy of love. And I know the world needs more love.
Yeah.
And to me, all of a sudden, it all made sense. Here I am in the heart of Mexico. I'm here to leave a legacy of love. There's literally crystal underneath that is associated with connecting to your heart. And I'm working with people to help them tap into their heart. And when they do that, their business gets better, their relationships get better, their connection to what they do gets better. Life just increases exponentially. So, it's not giving up anything. It's literally just
Expanding.
it's just shifting into what we're here to be.
Circling up.
Yes, exactly.
So
Exactly.
how do people get a hold of you if they want to? Because you work with people through Zoom, right?
I do.
Or
I'm launching a group program, and that'll be live in 3 weeks,
okay.
and I'll be launching a couple throughout the year. And I do work with people individually over the course of 6 months, and that includes 3 days down in San Miguel de Allende, where we do a deep dive into something that they want to get into, and we remove things, and it's transformational. So people can contact me several ways. I'll even give my direct email, which is Jeffery. So it's Jeffrey at in-breakthroughs.com.
Okay.
So that's
We'll
my
put
direct.
that in the show notes too. So
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then you could reach me on my Facebook business page, which is Jeffery Davis Coach. And again, Jeffery is Jeffery. Or on LinkedIn, I'm Jeffery Davis, and I'm a Jeffery Davis Coach there. So there's multiple ways that you can get me, and even my website, jeffreydaviscoach.com.
Okay. Well, listen, this has been great. Any last words, Barbara?
Just take heart that there is more to life than what you're feeling that you're stuck in. There's ways to transform, and
Yes.
don't be afraid of them. Don't let fear stop you. And if you need help, reach out.
Yes. I mean, you said something really important. Don't be afraid of it, because when you're afraid of it, you won't make that choice. And when you're afraid of it, you will make a choice that won't be a choice that serves you.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
serves your fear. It doesn't serve you.
Yes. Yes. And just as we've said earlier, everything you've done up till now is preparing you for where you're going. So listen, guys, thank you for coming on today. We appreciate it. And come back and check us out next week. Bye. Oh, share this out.
Bye.
Thank you.
Share this out. Click like and share. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe and ring the bell.